On today's episode of Collect Your Thoughts, we will be dissecting a very interesting, sometimes hard topic to talk about. And I would like to begin this conversation with a great quote. Macho, macho man, I want to be a macho man. Today we're talking about masculinity. What do you think about that, Jason?
Yes, let's do it.
Oh, showing the guns today. I didn't know we were going to the gun show. And guess what? We're bringing you with us. So stay tuned, buckle up. We're going to get into all things masculinity right now. Welcome to Collect Your Thoughts. I'm Sean Millhouse, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Jason LeCompte, also a licensed professional counselor.
Yes. So how are you doing today, Jason?
Pretty good, Shawnikins. How are you?
I am. So for those listening, if you couldn't tell already, we have been recording these podcasts in various times. And so there are certain references of things that are happening in older episodes that are showing that we're not like at the current time that you're listening to this. And so I say all that because we are getting ready to launch this podcast. And that's what I'm in the midst of working on right now. We're all working on this, and it's exciting endeavor, but it's also a very stressful endeavor. But it also shows me it means a lot to me. We're hoping to put on a good show. And if you're listening to this, watching this, that hopefully you're enjoying it. So that's what's been going through my mind. I really am just trying to navigate those little stress demons that are eating away at me right now a little bit. But otherwise, life is going on. It's doing its thing.
Good. I'm happy for that. I'm good. I've got that Friday feeling. It's the end of my work week. I'm out of town on vacation next week. So I'm feeling pretty light and breezy.
Yeah.
I know you're in it. I know you're elbow deep in it. So I'll just give a little early shout out that I appreciate your efforts. I know it's a lot of work. I really do. I know it is.
Well, thank you. And I couldn't do this without you and everybody else that is helping with this whole thing. So I appreciate every step of the way in that partnership. So thank you.
And speaking of everyone else that's helping out, we are going to have a special guest today. It's going to be Asher Morgan.
Dr. Asher Morgan.
Oh, excuse me. Dr. Asher Morgan. Yes. Also a licensed professional counselor, one of our favorite people at the collective. And they have what I think might be a unique perspective on the subject of masculinity, but they've agreed to join us. And so we're going to include them in the conversation, which is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited for it.
Yes. I'm very excited for everybody to meet Asher as well. And also what's great about this is right now with this podcast, you've only met Jason and myself. And the hope, the goal is for everyone in our private practice, Bentonville Counseling Collective, to jump on board, co-host episodes. And so that is going to be a great segue into getting to meet Asher. And then in future episodes, Asher will be co-hosting and will be more and more a part of this. Jason, it was a great idea to link them in for many reasons, but it's also just like a perfect segue for us to begin like the next chapter of, extending the rope, extending I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say. It's basically
whatever that metaphor is where we loop everybody in and we have a great time with it. That's the metaphor.
Bringing everybody in. We are bringing everybody in. And I'm excited for you to meet everybody in our practice, and we will get to that shortly. But first, we need to take a brief break so that we can loop Asher in and begin this really awesome conversation on masculinity. So hang tight. We'll be right back. And we're back. And we're not just back with just good old Jason and I. We are back with Dr. Asher Morgan. Asher, how you
Hey,
doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to finally get to be a part of an episode. I'm excited.
Yeah, welcome. I'm
We're so
excited too.
excited to have you. So, for I guess before we kind of go into how you came to be with us, how about you just tell us a little bit about your background, your experiences, education, whatever you think would be helpful for our listeners and viewers to know about you.
I've been a counselor for about 3 years now. I had the privilege of doing my internship with the collective, and but before that, I worked at the University of Arkansas for 11 years. You introduced me as a doctor, so I do have a PhD in community health promotion, which is a subset of public health. And so I've done a lot of wellness work. I used that. That was my job at U of A. And so I started there the first 7 years. I did substance abuse prevention and intervention. So working with college kids around alcohol, marijuana, and other drugs, and doing like prevention programming, outreach, and then also the intervention part of that if they did have a run in with the conduct office and then have to go through educational programming there, then that was also my job. And then I kind of segued out of that and spent the last 3.5 years at U of A doing just wellness related stuff. The easiest way to say it was I helped basically freshmen and sophomores learn how to adult, and so things that maybe they didn't get along the way. And yeah, I mean, just basic stuff sometimes from resilience, coping skills, which definitely translated to what I do now to, what's a self-addressed stamped envelope. And so like things that we might not think about. And so, but yeah, and then, I did my internship with y'all, and then I went out kind of on my own for a year, and I'm super happy to be back.
We're so happy you're back, right, Jason?
I feel like Asher, I am also very grateful that you're on board with us at the collective and that you're part of the episode. I feel like we maybe could have had you be part of the adulting episode that we recorded.
I know. Now that you said that, I was like,
oh, yeah, I forgot that was a major part of your work. But I'm sure you'll contribute in lots of other ways going forward too. So
I mean, I'm sure it'll come back around. It's not like adulting ever stops.
It does.
Right.
It does. We actually solved adulting last episode, so we're
And
done.
you're just holding out?
I mean,
we have to sharing
I
it?
have to listen to it to then know how it works out.
So, Sean, I have a question. What made you pick this topic? Why are we talking about masculinity?
Well, as one of the most masculine people that anyone's ever met, I thought I was the authority on this topic.
Great.
So, no, actually, I appreciate that question because I was, really thinking about what are things that feel really important and present with what's going on in the world today. And also what is something I've had to contend with my whole life. And masculinity came up for me. And I think my relationship to it is as a gay man who always knew he was a little bit different, and couldn't easily hide. Like basically the minute I talk, I know that I have an expressive voice and I don't, I don't just stay down here. See, like even I sound dumb when I even try to be masculine, or at least the stereotype of masculinity, which is what we're talking about today. But
we're going to dig into it.
Yes, but I think, I'm also, for those who haven't met me, I'm like 6'2", I'm a big guy. And so there was always this assumption that I was supposed to be this big, like linebacker or a basketball player growing up. And I got a lot of flack and bullied in high school for not being that. I was the drama geek. I was the writer. I was just, a silly bitch. And so I really think about what masculinity looks like now. And I see so much progress in how men of our, I don't know, of current generations and even, millennials and on Gen X too, is I think that masculinity has absolutely changed for the better in a lot of ways, but we've also seen such an uptick in toxic masculinity, which we'll get more into because of after the election, there was so much coverage over how young men really gravitated towards extreme conservative right-wing politics.
Yeah.
And
mostly Gen Z you're talking, right?
Yes, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
at least the newest voting block
Right.
that has
Yeah.
come up, right? And so I want to understand that more, and I think I have some ideas about why that has happened and what's going on with that. But I also thought, what a juicy conversation for us to all get into, and
No,
also,
that's awesome.
yeah,
I love talking about gender and sexuality. Obviously, it's a big part of my work. I think I've always sort of pushed against stereotypes around gender roles, and so I love that you wanted to bring this up here and now. And then also, it's June, so it's Pride Month, and so we get to also talk about queer identities, which is another favorite topic. But yeah, I totally appreciate it. So yeah, thanks for bringing it up.
of course, yeah. So moving into our like topic and conversation today, um, I think it would be really important to maybe first like define masculinity and what does that look like and how do we do that nowadays and who is the authority on that? So I'm kind of curious. I'm going to throw it, Asher, I'm going to throw it to you because I know that's a really easy question.
Right? Yeah. No, I've
Oh yeah,
actually
super easy.
spent a lot of time over the like since y'all asked me to be a part of this, like trying to figure out what does it actually mean, just in general, and for me, because listening to you kind of talk about your experiences, I experienced a lot of the opposites, where it was like, being born AFAB and preferring traditionally more like male things. Like this has been my haircut most of my life, ever since my mom let me finally make the decision on what it was going to look like. Always really big into sports, really big into outdoors, like never wanted to be like doing the things that other traditional like girls were doing when I was growing up. Like I was very much more comfortable. I don't really know how I define it, because now I feel like so much of my work, especially echoing off of Jason, for myself and then just professionally, is like breaking that down of like it doesn't matter. And and it's very much tied to gender for me. Or maybe even biological sex might be a better way of like, at what point did we decide like these things are just for this group, these things are just for this group,
Right.
as opposed to like it doesn't matter and
That's one of
everybody
my favorite things. Yeah.
everybody can like it. And so I mean, I don't know, I have really always tied it to assigned sex, but I've also always challenged that like my whole life. Like every part of my being, when I look back across my lifetime, has been to try to do the opposite of all of that because it didn't fit. But I also think it gets tied into like these like associations of like strength and like stoicism, and like if you're not
Huh?
emotionally strong and you have big feelings and you're not masculine, and like but then you have to be like physically strong and you have to like these things from this like checklist that I don't know who created that checklist. I would like to have a conversation with them.
The patriarchy, which we'll get into.
But who wrote it?
The patriarchs.
I love that you're talking about it in that way, because I love deconstructing things. That's one of my favorite parts about being a therapist, is that I get to take notions like masculinity and break them down. The way that I've defined it sort of culturally, historically, maybe stereotypically for a long time, is that men, at least outwardly, emotionally, we can be angry and we can be fine. That's it. Nobody wants to see a man who's overjoyed, who's as excited as a little kid gets, or who's sobbing uncontrollably. Everybody gets uncomfortable with that. And I'm using the term everybody loosely, but truly, like culturally, these are some of the stigmas attached to emotional expression from masculine people. And so I love breaking those things down. And I mean, not that I need to give them permission, but essentially give my clients permission to express feelings. And it's incredible the difference that happens in their relationships and in their work and all of those sorts of things.
Absolutely. And I want to hear more from your point of view, Jason, of kind of your relationship with and thoughts on masculinity from your own lived perspective.
Sure. I grew up in a house, I might have mentioned before, there's three of us, three brothers. And so there were a lot of 8 assigned males at birth, a lot of traditional gender roles that I think were sort of communicated from my parents generation, and like who we were supposed to be. So I grew up doing things like sports. I grew up hunting and fishing. I grew up learning how to work on cars. All these things that are sort of like traditionally or stereotypically like masculine. What's funny is I think maybe as a teenager, maybe as a young adult, like I really started to connect to what I started to call my more feminine side, my feminine energy that I feel like I inhabit. And those were things like more emotional expression, more creativity, more sensitivity to other people. And maybe I'm jumping the gun kind of describing some of this stuff, but like these were my experiences like as a young adult. And it was really hard to overcome or to really embrace that side of myself, having grown up in a house with a bunch of boys who were taught all of these sort of traditional things. And then of course you want to layer on sexuality and religious values and all that sort of other stuff. It was a huge push for me to really embrace a more feminine side, if we want to talk in these terms, right? So yeah, I mean that was largely my experience and even some of my, I guess, my growth.
From my perspective, especially in the gay community, I think there are so many labels and all kinds of roles and things like that maybe we can place people into. And I will say, like, I'm guilty of being like, damn, like I'm jealous of how masculine Jason is. Because seriously, like, and I know part of that is my own bullshit of like, Jason has a very passing nature about him. He could very well just be with the bros and won't have anybody go, I think he's a little.
So part of that experience, John, was learning how to become a masterful code switcher.
Right.
I can literally mask. I can turn it on and off. My husband will notice it when I walk into like any kind of like maybe public setting, a restaurant or whatever. And he will tell me after, he's like, your voice drops an octave. And I'm like, shut up. No, it doesn't. But it probably does. Like I probably code switch in that environment just out of a sense of safety or connection or something, right? I learned somewhere along the way that I would have to go, hey, what's up? And like, it's weird to hear me do it when you know me, because I usually do talk in a slightly higher register, but I just do it sort of automatically. So yeah, code switching is a big piece of it too.
Oh, and I mean, I think any queer person, that's something that you have to do. My thing is, as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, Jason, I get it. We all have to code switch. You were just really good at it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing is,
really
I wanted to be good at it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. Like, as hard as I tried, I couldn't make it more. I don't know how to do it. I just, and so, but I was so envious of people, and still can be sometimes, because it would be nice to just slip into a room and people just see a person, a man, as opposed to others, insert derogatory term potentially. And so that's definitely something I've had to work out in my own, therapy and just personal growth. But I appreciate hearing, your also the universal experience of, for same thing. If I get around a repairman who comes to my house, you better believe, oh yeah, how you doing, man? What's going on? Like, I will definitely talk more in this place right here, right now. And I'll be like, that's really great. Thank you so much. Like, much more than, this place where I typically live. Which anyway. So I guess from there.
So
Asher,
can I interject?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Asher, I'd love to hear
100%.
kind of your thoughts. Yeah.
So for me, listening to you talk about code switching, Jason, as a like non-binary person, I go both ways. Sometimes I have to code switch and be like more feminine sounding, and then sometimes I like drop it down an octave, and it really depends on environment, what I'm doing, who I'm interacting with. It also like depends. Sometimes it even, I mean, because we all know I love a good graphic tee. I'm not wearing one right now, but I do, with semi-political statements on them.
Speaking of
everyone right now who isn't watching, Jason is wearing a shirt that he he had made that is a peach, and then underneath it says it's the peach emoji.
I'll bring
and
it
then
back.
It says lover.
Jason's
You can
favorite
have
emoji.
that however you like.
A good peach.
He loves a Georgia peach.
Sorry, Asher, I interrupted your introduction.
No, you're good. Like, but I even consider that of like, where am I going? You know, because we live in Arkansas, and I even live a little bit outside of town, and so it's like going to even the like Dollar General or the gas station or the neighborhood market close to my house. I'm like, do I have the energy to wear this shirt or this hat? Because I've had run-ins with people that like want to say something or want to give me a look, and you know, and it's like, some days I'm like, you know, fuck it, I'm gonna wear what I want to wear, I already have it on. And then others I'm like, no, and I'll either swap it out or pull something on over it.
A literal costume change.
Yeah, literally. And then because I'll go back once I get home because it's what I was wearing and it was what I wanted to wear. But finding it interesting that like just listening to you talk about code switching and the changing of voices of like, no, I do that more feminine depending on certain situations where I'll go up. And then there are other times where it's like, no, to feel like safe, because for me it is all about safety. I'm going to bring it down an octave and give a real firm handshake and like try to make you think I'm a bro. And
Exactly.
Yeah. But I will say, Sean, like, it's fucking exhausting. Like when you're like, I wish I could do it. Jason's such a bro. I'm like, it's so tiring though to constantly be scanning the environment of like and trying to decide.
But I do it too, you guys.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm just saying he's good at it. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying I'm jealous that like Jason he presents very masculine. He's got a nice masculine voice.
It's my theater degree.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Literal voice change.
Just accept it. I'm just saying these are truths. It's not about who's good or bad. It's not an indicator of anything good or bad. It's not great. It's terrible.
No.
We feel that, right? But yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I could bring it back to authenticity. Like we've covered that several times, several episodes. This is my most authentic self. I am the most comfortable in this presentation, in this mode that I enter the world in. It does change sometimes, but this is like this presentation. This is just me. And so it probably comes across as masculine. Okay, great. I'm not trying to put anything on because of that, right? This is just literally just me showing up in that space.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's
reiterating
my point.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I can't.
Right.
Like believe me, I am seriously. There were times where I thought I would totally love to reach out to a voice coach to help me have more of a in the lines like masculine voice. Because like even that was a big part of why I didn't want to do podcasting. For years, anytime I heard my voice, I felt horrendous. Like I just was like, oh my God, who people listen to that all the time? And I know that's a pretty universal experience for a lot of people hearing their own voice. But for me, it was not only, I don't like hearing my own voice. It was not man enough.
Sure.
That was the message I've had to continue to overcome. So
it's tied to some deeper stuff.
Yeah.
It's tied to some deeper stuff.
Always. So, as I've mentioned in many of our only 5 episodes, is the subject of the patriarchy. And that is something that has been thrown around increasingly, I'd say, over the last decade. I definitely think social media has amplified that for many reasons. And so I thought it'd be important to first define that instead of it just being this like blanket term that maybe some people have general ideas of. So I pulled from Bell Hooks, who gave this definition. She said, the patriarchy is a political social system that insists that males are inherently dominating, superior to everything and everyone, deemed weak, especially females, and endowed with the right to dominate and rule over the weak and to maintain that dominance through various forms of psychological terrorism and violence. It's no accident that feminists began to use the word patriarchy to replace the more commonly used male chauvinism and sexism. These courageous voices wanted men and women to become more aware of the way the patriarchy affects us all. And I thought that was such a important thing to say, because it's not just about men being the problem, which I think sometimes is the dominant message that I think a lot, especially young men right now, are hearing is you're a problem, you're not, you need to do this. Men are canceled, men are this, men are trash. And for centuries, many men have done things to equate to that, but not but we can't keep paying for the sins of all of that. But at the same time, we've got to absolutely take responsibility for doing better. So I'm curious, when you guys hear the term patriarchy, it's such a loaded word, I think. What do you think?
I mean, I don't attach it to gender or sex. For me, it's more systemic. It's like, it's similar to like all of these systems were set up to benefit certain populations and certain roles. And that's not just men. Like, there are subsets of women that very much so benefit from falling into like and following more traditional patriarchal roles and systems. And so, I mean, that's what it is for me, but it is about that like stratification. It's just another construct within our society of a way to like stratify and rank the haves and the have nots for me.
I think when I hear that word, I think burn it all down.
Yes.
I absolutely, I'm on the same page as Asher. Like, I think about it as a systemic issue. It's a structure that's in place. It's born maybe from a set of traditional values or rules or even stereotypes that we sort of fell into, and maybe out of a sense of survival, or maybe out of a sense of cultural conformity, or wherever wherever the idea comes from. The idea that men should be running things and that men are in control and men are powerful and men make decisions, or it's absurd if you really look at it. But also it is a system that I think we just do need to really more actively dismantle. I know that we can't just burn it all down, even though sometimes it feels like that would be the easiest thing to do, is just start everything over. But obviously we can't do that. So we do need to just start deconstructing and dismantling pieces of it as best we can, and start leaning into the discomfort of whatever the opposite is, or whatever the antithesis of some of these systems of control and power are. We have to start relinquishing, and maybe underneath it is fear, like scarcity. I think that might be part of it. That if we
everything,
yeah, that if we start to lean into more of the idea of, if we work together, there's enough for everybody. And I get that that's maybe socialist in its origins, but I think it's I don't know. I have to like try and love everybody. Like I have to try and like make space for everybody. And so I just feel like the patriarchy doesn't do that well enough. There's got to be a different system.
I mean, I think by definition, the thought of loving everyone is not one of the core tenets of patriarchal logic.
No, because if you're doing that, then that takes away the like power and superiority, because I'm not going to say it completely does, but it starts to level out the field. Like, I'm not sure. I believe without some massive overhauls that we can do that, at least in our lifetimes. But like, it starts to take away, and that is scary, of like, what does that mean if I relinquish some of this, not realizing that like what benefits the least of us benefits all of us.
I love that.
That sounds really close to something that like Jesus Christ might have said somewhere. I don't want to,
did you all
get into the pulpit or anything, but the meek shall inherit the earth. It's one of those. Anyway, I'm not going to be a Bible quoter. Not this episode.
This is a Christianity podcast now.
Yes.
Hey, no harm to great Christians. There's such a thing.
No, fantastic. Yes.
Absolutely. So anyway, I wanted to kind of have that be sort of an umbrella, and then we'll kind of put that little bit to the side. And now I'm curious about how this shows up for us personally and professionally. And we've talked about some of that personally to some extent. I would like to maybe ask both of you, what were some positive, I guess, expressions of masculinity that you feel like you saw either growing up or that you've even seen nowadays? Because I think it's important to know that we're not bashing on masculinity as much as a lot of this conversation has been about being critical about it. It is just about deconstructing it. So let's talk about what are the good parts of masculinity. How does that relate to y'all? Asher?
I mean, for me, I think about growing up and the examples that I had, and knowing where the two of you are from, I'm definitely the most southern of the three of us, and both of my parents are from central Mississippi. And so we spent like just about every summer there. And I'm not sure either of you know this about me, but my middle name is Jack, but it's Jack because of my great uncle. And like it was kind of a way of like, I don't ever want to have kids, and so how can I kind of carry some family stuff forward with me, even if it ends with me? But he was just the like antithesis of like, I would consider him a manly man because of how he carried himself. I mean, he was a butcher by trade. And he loved outdoorsy things, but he was so caring for his family and just carried this air of compassion with him, and was always the first to like advocate for me when I wanted to be doing the things that my boy cousins were doing and not the things my girl cousins were doing, and like telling my dad to kind of back off and just let me be and let me be a kid. And and then helping me do things that neither of my parents wanted to help me do because they weren't traditionally like girly. And just, but he carried this air of like compassionate love with him, even if he was doing things that were like in the 90s a more man role, like. And I don't know, I carry that with me now. And then now I see it present as being able to just identify feelings, like even if they struggle to express them, to just like know kind of like why they're feeling what they're feeling, or at least working to try to figure it out. So, and I see a lot of, cis men in my circles, whether they're straight or LGBTQ, that are like trying to break those cycles that they grew up with of like, we're not going to feel our feelings. We're not even going to try to figure out what they are. We're just going to stuff them down and then be that like either angry or fine. And because there's no other feelings on the spectrum.
That's just, yeah.
And so like it's hard work, and I try to acknowledge it when I see them doing it, but that they're at least trying to break those cycles so that they don't carry it forward with their kids. And but also having that like compassionate joy with their friends, because I think traditional masculinity doesn't allow for a whole lot of joy. Like,
Amen.
like you're not allowed to be happy.
It's so right, and it's so tragic.
It really is. And I sure just really appreciate everything you just said, not only your personal experience, because I can just tell how impactful that was for you. So it's exciting hearing that as, someone, a friend and a colleague of yours, but then also just, your thoughts beyond that in terms of especially the joy part. So thank you. Yeah. Jason, what about you? What about how roles or people in situations that have been positive in your life with masculinity?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I had a pretty decent role models growing up. I definitely had a lot of like sort of traditional things going on, but it's interesting. My dad, at some point, I remember maybe when I was in middle school or something, like we used to tease him because he's a crier. Like we used to call him a softie or something. I remember exactly what it was, but like he would cry at like commercials or movies or like stuff we were watching on TV or whatever. And so we used to tease him because that's not what men were supposed to do. But I think I appreciate that I had some of that as a role model, just because I knew that expression, like, for as uncomfortable or as stigmatized as it was back then, like it sort of sets a stage for me maybe to do some of the work of getting comfortable with my own range of emotions as an adult man, right? So I feel like, if I'm thinking about just kind of early life, I have a massive family. Sometimes I say I have over 100 cousins. A lot of them were men and boys, and I feel like I had a lot of really great, kind, compassionate, loving men to like kind of look up to. And while, again, there are a lot of stigma, a lot of stereotypes still woven into that, the fact that I knew that I could be outgoing, I could seek connection, I could show love, I could like do those things, I feel like maybe those were early examples that really kind of like stuck with me and allowed me to be more comfortable with that in myself as an adult.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really been a thorough line in
Yeah.
like who you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I can access those things, and I can be those things when I want to be those things, and it's not shameful. It's not stigmatized. I don't feel as like maybe I imagine my dad did, as uncomfortable as being called out for it. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you both be able to express positive experiences with that, because again, we want to make sure that we're talking about this subject from multiple points of view.
Hmm.
For me personally, I was extremely fortunate to have a dad that was incredibly masculine, but did not give shits about being masculine. And so I never felt pressure to conform. I never felt pressure to be anything other than who I was and am. And I think that's also why by the time I got to a place where I encountered guys and boys really who were shitty in that way, it really took me off guard,
Yeah.
because I grew up in this environment of going, wait a second, I thought, wait, what do you mean that's
Yeah.
not a good enough? I was good enough to my dad and he could beat the shit out of all of you. Like, like he's this big dude, you know, he was a tall dude, did martial arts, rode motorcycles, like worked in warehouses, like mustache, like classic masculinity. But he celebrated women, he celebrated cultures from all walks of life, and just, you know, I'm so grateful for that now, because I realized growing up, as I got around more dads, I think I was able to clock like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable around a lot of other dads, because they seem so serious and they seem so miserable, because like the lack of joy that you're talking about, Asher.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, that makes me think about my own dad, who had like a lot of his own trauma that never got dealt with, that I, am still learning about. But he was just, it always felt like he was trying to live up to this thing, but was never quite able to get there. And it kept
Yeah.
him from like being able to, like, truly, from my lens, enjoy anybody in his circle, like whether it was me, whether it was my mom when they were still married, my stepmom, his friends. Like, it was always like he was trying to create this thing that he was never quite able to do or be or make, and he never seemed like truly happy because of it. And it
Wow.
was like, and I don't know if it was because he didn't know how, or if he wouldn't let himself be, or
Combination.
like, yeah, some combination of that and probably some other stuff, and just messages that he heard, because he was in the military. He was a career military guy until he retired.
Sure.
And and that didn't go his way, and so there was a lot of baggage there, and like just so much stuff. But like, he just genuinely never seemed happy the whole time I ever knew him. Like, and
Wow.
it's really sad to think about.
He's trying to fit into a box that he didn't belong in, at least not completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big piece of why this conversation is important, because I do think so many men, and honestly boys, they are in an emotional prison of sorts because of the signals and signs that have been sort of drilled into them of what it means to be a man. And it's so devastating and suffocating, and it makes sense why there's so much anger, because it's just all fused together and needs a
Yeah.
release, and it's not released in healthy ways, and therefore you get these, I think, really extreme responses that we're seeing more and more in our country, and honestly across the world. So now I am curious about, how does this show up in your work with clients? I think it shows up in really interesting ways in mine, but I definitely am always interested to hear how other clinicians see this work right now.
Yeah. I can speak to this for sure. I really enjoy working with men because I get to do some of this deconstruction and some of this essentially permission giving. And that's men of all ages. Like I work with young men, teenagers. I work with people of all sort of on the gender spectrum. I talk about this in terms of relationship roles. Honestly, like generationally, it also looks different. I think I've mentioned it before. Like I have clients from ages 15 to 70 right now. Like, and so I really do get to explore this in lots and lots of different ways, which is intellectually fascinating, but also just in terms of the work. Like I love getting to really ask people like what their experiences are, what their expectations are of themselves, what it feels like in their relationships with friends or partners or whoever it might be. And then another layer of that is when I do couples work, if there is a mask presenting or mask identifying person in the relationship, we get to talk about like, what are the expectations you have of yourself? How do you think you need to show up? How do you want to show up? Where's the disparity there? How do we move a little closer towards the middle? Like a lot of that stuff is super, super relevant now, maybe like you said, like at the beginning, more than ever. And so, yeah, it's one of my favorite things, like working specifically with people who identify on that more masculine spectrum. Like this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So that's, yeah, in a nutshell, that's how it is for me.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Ash?
Yeah, I would say I find it really interesting because, I mean, the majority of my clients are queer and like all across the gender spectrum. And so some of them are trying to figure out like how to release traditional masculinity. Some of them are trying to figure out how to embrace it and what it looks like for them while also trying to deconstruct those patriarchal views and like of what it means. And then I always like looking back at like messages that they got, like where did you learn what this means to be X, Y, and Z, and how does that like present for you, and what parts of it do you want to carry forward, what parts of it are you trying to just release into the atmosphere and never experience again as much as you're capable of. But I also find it interesting that something that comes up for a lot of my like AFAB male clients, so my trans male clients, is like they're no longer allowed to cry, or not allowed to cry. They're no longer capable of it. Like,
Which, can I just pause and say, for anybody who doesn't know, when we say AFAB, that's assigned female at birth.
Yeah.
Some people might have missed that. I think you had said that earlier, but
I did say it earlier, yeah.
For anybody that does not know that, I just want to really reiterate it so we're not like talking over like anybody's heads. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's like, especially those that are on like hormones, you know, and hormone replacement therapy, I have several that are no longer capable of crying. Like they want to, and they feel the emotions that used to elicit tears, and they're just incapable of it. And that then triggers like anger, frustration, like this sense of like, I don't know how to let go of this because this is how I used to do it. And so we have to, you know, try to find new strategies and coping skills and around that. And some of them struggle with it more than others because they want that and they're frustrated that they can't have it, and they don't like that now they're perpetuating a traditional masculine stereotype of like men don't cry, and they're like, no, I really want to, I just can't, and like have even tried, and they feel that frustration. But no, I love just deconstructing it. I think one of my favorite parts about being a therapist is helping people figure out and learn that they can write that definition for themselves, that it doesn't have to be what came from a book, and that it can include whatever they want to, and that it's now their definition of masculinity.
I love that. I think that's, and same, like I think everything you're saying, just I'll briefly echo, is I've loved, especially honestly with the young mass presenting and those who identify as men, clients that I work with, is honestly the openness, especially with those who are more, you know, maybe who at one point would say they identify purely as heterosexual. I feel like that's one of the great things about like Gen Z, and you know the statistics show about how this is, you know, the queerest generation that we've had, at least those who have openly identified that. And I think such a big piece of that is because of the curiosity and openness around the conversation, which is also, though, in contrast, is why I think I was a little initially taken off guard by how things happen with the 2024 election, because I felt like I saw so much positive movement in the direction of I think like guys openly hugging each other and like cuddling and saying I love you and wearing nail polish and just like being so much freer in the colors they wear, their hairstyles. The fact that guys were openly talking about getting perms in high school. I wanted to get my hair permed when I was in high school because I always wanted really wavy hair. And so to hear now like that was the cool thing to do, I'm like, motherfucker. And so anyway,
But we paved the
I
way, Sean. We paved the way.
right. I mean, every time I wore a pink shirt, which I have some pink in my shirt right now, is I felt like I was, yeah, define masculinity in a way that it's on my terms. But again, going back to the professional part of that is that it's really cool to hear people when I'm working with them say, like, I want to know more about what it would look like for me to express this differently. And that it doesn't change or take away masculinity. It just, I think, adds color to it. And that's so cool.
This like came up for me listening to you talk, Sean. I don't remember exactly what it was you said that triggered it, but one of my favorite TikTok trends right now is like calling your friends to tell them goodnight.
Yes,
Yeah.
And if
it's
you
the
want to see like
cutest.
the spectrum of like masculinity all the way from like healthy to maybe potentially toxic and it making them like frustrated and angry, I feel like I've witnessed it. And it's just like they're doing it as a like a joke to see how their friends would respond, but it's just like they're just randomly calling up a friend, and when their friends like hello, they're just like, hey man, I just wanted to tell you good night and I hope you've had a really good day and I hope you have sweet dreams. And like, you know, and some have reacted like really emotionally of like I had a really
Some will
heavy
even
day.
say I love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They
then
get
others are like, the
you can
fuck are
hear how
you
moved
talking
they
about?
are.
And it's just
Yeah.
like I feel like it's the whole spectrum of what we've been talking about today, just wrapped up in something that's so sweet.
I'm so
And-
Yeah,
glad
it's
that
a
you
silly
mentioned
little
that.
viral trend, but
Yeah.
it's absolutely demonstrating like the comfort with emotional expression that that men or boys get to have or not have. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great example.
It is. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And I actually thought about
Yeah.
that briefly. So I'm glad that you found a way to loop it in because it is this sweet vulnerability that you witness of these when of course, my algorithm thankfully shows me the positive versions of that trend. And so I was really, at first I was like, oh God, what is this going to be like? But I was like, I was taken off guard because you can tell the friend on the who's being called in the positive versions is taken off guard, but in the most delighted way. They're like, "Oh, it's so good to hear from you, and thanks, man. You too. I love you too. I miss you." Men, say that to each other. Don't be afraid, and don't wait until you're wasted on some substance to
Right.
do it because it's such a waste if you can't feel it in your everyday life. At least that's one of my soapboxes.
That was one of the things that I always appreciated about raising kids was that both of my kids, like, and so I have a son and a daughter that are both cishet, and like they both would just openly tell their friends like how much they loved each other, and it was like a constant conversation, and it was just another one of those like beautiful things about this generation of kids coming out that like I was like I would have never like
God.
in
No,
high
in my
school.
school they would have been like, "Oh, you're being so gay. You're being drop the F slur." You know? Yeah.
Yes, that's interesting. I was actually thinking about that. So I had the, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm just going to say experience of going to an all boys high school. And we had a retreat at one point, junior year and senior year, where we actually did that intentionally. Like we wrote letters to each other and read them to each other. Like it was essentially like a set of rituals over the course of like a weekend. And we went away and we slept there. But it was about like emotional expression and bonding. And it was amazing. Like I'm really, really grateful for that. But just going back a little bit, like the whole range of experiences that some of my friends had, like with their parents or with their fathers, like, yeah, it was all over the place. It was everything from hypermasculine to non-existent, essentially. Right.
Yeah. And it's like, which is worse, to have nothing, to have well, probably the abusive part would, I mean, I don't know.
Sure.
It's all shit, right? Like, I mean, bad is bad no matter how you shade it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. That's really interesting, guys. Now, I thought I thought it'd be cool to talk about this term and sort of its relationship to psychology. And I just want to go over some of the known either thought leaders, researchers, philosophers in the field that have talked about masculinity in really helpful ways. So when I was doing my research, one of the top results that came up for me was Dr. Ronald Levant, who is a psychologist and professor. He was actually, I guess, the professor of the American Psychological Association back in 2005. So he's got some pretty deep roots in this field, and he does a lot of work in masculinity. And I thought this quote from him was really good, which goes, our message, psychology's message, is that it's not positive masculinity. It's really getting rid of the connection that people have to be masculine or feminine and allow them to be the human beings they are.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. Because that, I think, goes back to what you both have been saying is about it's not just about assigning it to people who are born into the sex of men or who see themselves more gender aligned with masculinity. It is about how we need to just see ourselves as people at the end of the day, but still appreciate the quirks or the strengths, the traits that can come with that. There was another part too I wanted to mention briefly, which is that there was a study that Dr. Levant did where it showed apparently that mothers of children who were between 4 to 6 years old, they could in the younger years be able to see and emotionally respond to their children of either sex in a way that was, pretty much the same. They said like mothers would treat boys and girls, their children, the same. But as they got older, they could see through the research that even mothers pulled back on how expressive they were with their young boys. So this is something that is happening at a very young age, a lot of times subconsciously, that young boys are shown to really fall into much smaller lines of what their expressiveness can be and how that is reaffirmed in the culture that we're in. Like, I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I actually have a personal story, something that I witnessed myself. We were waiting in line at an event.
Sorry.
We got some floppy ears.
Yes, we do. Hazel entered the chat.
Nice. We were waiting in line at an event to like have dinner or something, and there were a lot of people there, but there was this little boy that I saw just, I don't know, 30 feet away, and he had misbehaved or something, and somebody yelled at him. I didn't catch all of it, but what I saw was he was facing the wall of some outbuilding, and he was facing the wall because he was crying. He couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old, but I could see in his body language and in his face that he was ashamed that he was crying in front of other people or in front of his father, or whatever it was. And it broke my heart in that moment. Like, I called it out. And I mean, this is probably 10 years ago I had this experience, and I can still see that little kid's face. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Like, we really do learn these messages really, really early on.
Yeah.
Just broken. Well, I mean, why? Yeah, you're sad. Go ahead and cry. Like, why is there so much shame attached to that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the fact that their songs and movies literally called Boys Don't Cry, like, Jesus. Another thought leader I wanted to mention before we move on is Judith Butler, who is an American feminist philosopher and gender studies scholar. And she's known for her work called Gender Performativity. And this quote I thought was great from her. She said, "Gender is not a fixed essential characteristic, but is instead a performance of social construction enacted through repeated behaviors and language. She argues that masculinity, like other gender categories, is a cultural and historical construction, not a natural outcome of biology. This means that what we consider to be quote unquote manly or masculine is learned and shaped by social norms and expectations, not inherent in the male body."
100%.
Mic drop, right?
Yeah.
It's all performance. So as we conclude, how do we help people with, I think, embracing masculinity, supporting those who are trying to work through their masculinity, helping those who maybe feel like they need to present in certain traditional ways. What do you guys have to offer?
I mean, I feel like that's not it feels like such a simple question, but it's also not at all.
Yeah. Like all of these things.
Yeah, because honestly, this was one of my like least favorite answers in grad school because it depends.
Yes.
Like
Totally.
it depends on environment, who you're around, on some level too. Like we've all talked about situations today where like you have to gauge safety, like whether it's literal safety or just emotional safety
Yeah.
and protecting yourself. But I think the work that we do and just continuing to help people know that it's okay. And then that happens too with our friends, and people that we interact with. My family's pretty small, but Jason mentioned yours is really, really big. And it's like holding space for that. And like even a few weeks ago when I did my bike ride thing, we all kind of congregated. There were couples there that had their kids the night before, and just kids were restless. The adults were trying to like reconnect and do their thing. And it was like trying to just hold space, for all the kids and let them feel their feelings. And it was being allowed to happen. And it was beautiful because like one of them was like frustrated because it was like he wanted to be interacting with the adults, but he wanted to be interacting with the adults around his interests and like naturally as like a small child does. It's like, I like this thing. I want to show it to you. I want you to be excited about it too. And it was like, everybody there was just completely fine. Like I think about growing up, like there would have been so much shame and shutting of that down of like that whole, like, you need to be like seen and not heard and go do your own thing, figure your shit out, like leave us alone, like go to your go to your room, the adults are talking. And it wasn't that at all. And it was like he was there, he didn't melt down, but he wasn't happy. And it was just kind of like he got a little bit of attention, not what he was wanting, but it was just like, we know this is frustrating for you and that's okay. But there was also this air of like, you're allowed to feel that, but what's happening isn't necessarily going to change. And I think sometimes that too, around like boys and men and big emotions, it's like they express that big emotion and it's like everything changes and we just do whatever they want to do. And it wasn't that at all. And I think, like I said this jokingly earlier, but I think, our generation kind of paved the way for this. And, some of it is deconstructing our own shit and not wanting to carry that forward. And some of it is like, people like Sean that had dads that kind of like exemplified that, because mine did not. And like, we each bring our own path.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think I bring it back to connection and relational health. I think when we are more emotionally expressive, and I'll put an asterisk on this because when I talk to men about emotional expression, I talk about the relationship to anger. I do this work a lot, and that anger is almost always secondary. It's almost always an automatic deflection or defense against the painful thing that's underneath. So it's disappointment or it's confusion or it's something is not sitting right and they don't like it. And so I'm not encouraging anger, but what I'm encouraging is to find whatever the pain is underneath that anger and express that. And when we do that, it's at its core, it's vulnerability. And as we know, and it wouldn't be an episode of Collect Your Thoughts without mentioning Brene Brown, vulnerability is the seed of connection. Like, we do not connect without being vulnerable. And so for me, that's what I come back to almost every time about masculinity and emotional expression is this is better for your relationships.
Yeah.
It's better for you and your connections with the people that you care about. And when you don't do that, or when you're always just angry, all you're doing is hurting your relationships. So nobody wants either.
Yes.
Yeah. To me, that's the biggest. Yeah, that's my biggest connection to the work.
I would say the two takeaways I wanted to make sure and put forth today was one towards all people, especially particularly those who I see it a lot in social media where, increasingly there's the whole, oh, that gives me the ick. And especially from women or those who define themselves as women, saying that about men in various ways. When men cry, that's an ick. When men wear flip-flops, there's an ick. And so I want to challenge everyone out there. If people are just trying to figure it out, okay, if you don't like it, great. You don't have to like it. But let's not be surprised when men feel like they're trapped in a box when they try to go outside of it and you shove them back in. That's going to make them feel pretty pissed off. I think all of us feel like caged animals when we're told that thing you were trying, no, you're not allowed to do that. Like, gross. So that's like the first one for everyone, I think, is let's be responsible with how we allow people to experiment with whatever they want to do with themselves in every way, physically, emotionally, mentally, in practice. The second thing is specifically for those who were born or assigned male at birth. I think it's a really complicated thing to do, but I think there's something really important about letting go of the ego around women and minorities being upset with traditional masculinity and not taking that as an attack on who you are. And I think there's various things that, I mean, we need to be really nuanced about that. But I think that some of what I see is that there's almost this like, no, I'm not going to accept that, bad things have happened to people of all walks of life because of what men or those who were born men like have been able to do or get away with. I think when we refuse that acknowledgement of we need to be accountable and do better as future generations, it keeps men, I think, from having that compassion for others. Like, we're in this weird, I don't know if this is making sense, but like I just feel like we're in this tipping scale of where women and minority voices have grown and grown and grown for various reasons, mostly because of how they're fighting for their lives in a lot of cases. And so I think men maybe feel like we're being pushed out, but it's not about being pushed out. It's about let's make space for everyone. And that includes men. And to not take that as a slight, not to say that we don't need you just because women can have babies without a man in their life doesn't mean that they think men are just pure shit that need to be like,
Removed from
freaking.
your shoe.
Yeah. And so I just think there comes a lot of like allowing yourself to go, yeah, there was a lot of shitty things that happened. Like, just like I know as a white person, I need to know that there's going to be a lot of minorities who might see me as someone who is white and cisgender and male, that I might not look like somebody that's going to treat them well. And so I always have that awareness around I want to create the best experience I can, and that's my responsibility. So I think that's not just about masculinity, but I think it comes up a lot, in my opinion, around masculinity.
Yeah, nice.
Because it's all intersectional. Like, you can't, like, it's all related. Like, we can't just talk about one thing in a silo. Like, they all overlap, they all intersect, they all live and dance together, and we have to acknowledge that. You're welcome.
In the Venn diagram of life, or whatever we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of this. I am now excited to put Jason on the spot to ask what we do every episode, which is to come up with a secret question that they will ask the others in the chat today. So, Jason, what's the question?
So I was back and forth a little bit on this, but I think what I would like to ask is, when do you, and we're going to extend it to Asher because they're here, when do you both feel the most masculine in your life? Maybe it's an activity that you're doing, or it's a situation, or whatever it might be.
I feel like mine is like maybe overly simplistic and more gendered than maybe I want it to be. But I would say it's like whenever I'm in a position or a situation that involves me getting to wear a tie.
Nice. I love that.
Whether it's a bow tie or a necktie.
Yeah.
there's just something about it, because it's something that I truly love, and it's an aspect of like presentation that definitely was stereotyped as masculine when I was growing up, and it's just
Love it. Yeah.
there's something about it, and I'm just like, yes.
Love that.
I like
Great
it.
answer.
Yeah. That's great.
So mine is, two things came to me at the same time. The first one was, again, I think this feels more traditional, is anytime I am being very physical with exerting my body, I feel very masculine then. Like if
Nice.
I'm sweating, if I'm moving things around, if I'm like really like putting the work and I'm just like, I don't give a fuck how I look. Like, like I go to this place where I just feel like I'm like, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and so that is like the classic one. But then also, and this is definitely one that I think this is where the idea of masculinity is tough, but like I definitely feel like more masculine when I feel like when I own my power, in terms of like if I feel really strong in myself, I associate that with masculinity. Like in a way that I don't know how I feel about that. I guess it's like the same way that I absolutely get obsessed when I see a woman be, as they say, a boss ass bitch. Like I like when I feel, because maybe that's it. You know what? Honestly, maybe that's it. I feel like I'm a boss ass bitch when I'm really on top of shit. And because that feels like power, and power is often associated with masculinity, I think that's my connection to it.
Nice.
What about you, Jason?
It's funny. I was actually going to say that almost a very similar thing to you, Sean. Like when I'm lifting weights, like at the gym, that's when I feel like I'm like, wow, like I actually look and feel like pretty masculine in that.
Yeah.
In that scenario. So yeah, that's my simple answer, but it's true. Like if I'm truly like searching all of the different places in my life where I might feel one way or another, and that's probably the one. Yeah.
Cool. Which seems like none of these feel like a stretch necessarily. Which
no, yeah.
I mean, I think that's hopefully relatable to those of you listening, watching. All right. Well, then our last thing that we do every episode is our shout outs, which is our way to basically give kudos, praise, and gratitude for the people and or things that are really awesome in our opinion right now. So Asher, do you have any shout outs?
I mean, I think mine would just be for the two of you in this process, because I know, Sean, you've talked about getting podcasts started for like even going back to when I was an internship, and like I'm really proud of you and Jason for, finally being vulnerable to do it, and like to put the episodes together and to do the work and to nerd out over like the process and editing and recording and what all we need to do to get it out, but then to also now build it to a point where you're starting to bring people in and to get to be one of those people, even though we have future plans. But I know that it was a really big step to get started, and sometimes that's the biggest step. And so, yeah, I think this is awesome. I'm super excited for where it can go and that I get to be a part of it.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Asher.
And I'm sorry for all the dog noise you're going to have to edit out.
Never apologize for dog noises. We will just have an episode called Dog Noises, and I'm okay with that.
It'll be ASMR focused, just all dog noises.
Yes. I can provide a whole episode of that if you need it.
Yeah,
we're making it happen. Yeah. All right, Jason, how about you? Did you come up with one?
Yes, I did. Yeah. It's honestly, the opportunities that I get to travel. So for people who don't know, like my husband's part of an international team, and so he gets to go lots of really cool places, and sometimes I get to join him. Not only do we travel on our own, like as parts of our vacation, but also like I get to tag along sometimes on work trips. And this week I get to go to Amsterdam, which is so fucking cool. I was there a long time ago. Luckily, I stayed connected with a person that I met there, and so we're going to hang out next week. We're going to just meet up 15 years later and just kind of catch up a little bit. But yeah, just the opportunity to travel, I think, is what I'm shouting at. It's just really important to me in terms of experiencing the world and different cultures and broadening perspectives. Like I feel like travel's the best education you can get. And so the fact that I still get to do it at this point in my life and do it more often is just incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What's yours, Shawnee?
Mine is Amy Poehler's podcast, Good Hang. We mentioned it, I believe, last session or the one, but last session.
Yeah.
therapist talk here. Last episode, and this has been a stressful week for me personally, and every episode that comes out, I just get a great big boost of joy and laughter. And this most recent episode that aired was with Seth Meyer, which actually I think is kind of a perfect wrap up to this whole conversation, is because I really walked away from listening to that conversation with like, wow, he's a really like emotionally secure and advanced male who's like in his 50s. And I love hearing that. Like he was emotional throughout it. He talked about how much he loves his friends and the idea of about how he knows if he can consider himself a good friend to people, then he feels like he's doing well. And I love hearing men talk about relationships and it not be only certain demographics that are willing to do that work. But also Amy Poehler is a gem. She's iconic. She is all of the hyperboles of just amazing and truly joy personified. So if you haven't listened to Good Hang with Amy Poehler, please start doing that. I think it will make your every day better that you listen to it.
He even said in that episode, I think friendship is the thing that I do best.
Yes. I loved that line.
And Amy backed him up on that. She was like, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah,
and she also said about how you have a lot of female friends, and he was like, and there was no like shrugging it off. There was no like, oh no, trying to distance himself. He was like, yeah, I do, and I'm really grateful for that. But he also respects the boundaries of what female friendship is and what that looks like for everybody. So anyway, thanks for mentioning that, Jason. So that's my shout out.
Nice, very cool.
Okay, well, we are at the end of our episode today. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. We would love for you to check out our website, bentonvillecounseling.com, where you can find out more about Bentonville Counseling Collective and even read up a little more about our Dr. Asher Morgan, who thank you for joining us today. And I can't wait to do future episodes co-hosting this with you. And Jason, of course, thank you for always being a great co-pilot.
Of course.
I love it.
It was awesome.
And
we want to invite people to comment on what masculinity might mean to you and some of even your journey or your experience with the idea of or deconstruction of social gender norms. All that stuff is, I think, really important to keep talking about, keep having conversation around. Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Asher?
No. Thank you for having me. Yeah. No, it was awesome. It was an awesome conversation, but yeah.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. I would like to just really encourage everybody out there, even though it's really hard sometimes, take a deep breath and
collect your thoughts.
That's right. Have a great one. We'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.